so much for finding time to be with us today. The show is Africa Showdown, where we're going to look at the Africa we want. And apparently, even AU has a roadmap, Agenda 2063, based on the Africa we want that was established in 2013, giving it a 50-year time framework in which some of these goals will be achieved. So we shall be looking at that, and other things also are happening across the continent, if at all they're in line with what Africans themselves want and what continent indeed we want. My name is Mira Mobutu, and it is a pleasure to have you on board. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in and joining us from. On the other side of the command center, we are joined by Dr. David Matanga. Doctor, very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Miriam. Thank you very much for holding the fort in Kenya, in the Republic of Kenya, in Nairobi. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are across the planet Earth. We are on planet Earth, and nobody has challenged us, but we don't know. People are challenging the other planets on top. People fly to Venus, to the sun, to the moon. They are trying. I hope these planets won't complain. But already we see the effects of the planets complaining. Too much rain, too much drought, too much floods, too many other natural things happening. The ocean is rising. Is it also because we touch things that God had put there and they had never been touched? Had you thought about it, Miriam? Had you thought about it, Tawish? That we are touching some things that God told us never to touch. It is like Adam and Eve. God said, go to that garden, and we started digging very badly. So good afternoon, wherever you are, in Nairobi, in Kenya. I hope you are enjoying your good sunshine. I hear it is bright. Some of us here are just hidden in small rooms, and the gas is not coming from Ukraine. We have a problem in Europe. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, viewers across the continent of Africa. This is Matsanga, Dr. Matsanga speaking right from the London Command Center headquarters. Back to you. And good afternoon, Tawish Olestisana. The topic today, Tawish, is the Africa we want. Let's be practical. Let's talk about it. What do you want in your house? What do you want in your home? What do you want in your school? What do you want your government to do? What type of government do you want in Africa? Is it the government that gives you bread? Which one do you want? Wherever you are across, which country you are, join us. Tell us the Africa we want. We must have a roadmap of the Africa we want. Otherwise, the Africa we have is lost in amnesia of conflicts. The Africa we have is confused in amnesia of voting. The Africa we have is confused in which country to support and not support. The Africa we have has difficulties in deciding whether to remember Libya or not. The Africa we have, there's a lot of difficulties on the Africa we have. We can't cross one border without very many documents. The Africa we have, you can't eat food even when there is that artificial border. You can't tell the other neighbor to bring you salt. That's the Africa we have right now. Borders have become barriers. Free trade. Dr. William Samoei Ruto told the whole Africa, the whole continent, the whole international community, the Africa we want. Free trade. Inter-Africa trade. Borderless Africa. When he was in Kampala, he made it very, very candid. We want borderless Africa. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto in Kenya, for saying it. We need it, but so many people have said it so many times. Can we have a borderless Africa for once? That A Tanzanian can enter freely without carrying his passport into Kenya, into Uganda, into Zimbabwe, into Rwanda, into Mogadishu, into South Sudan. Can you? The Africa that debates, the Africa that has healing, the Africa that has a redemption strategy, the Africa that has no war. Is that not the Africa we want, Miriam? Back to you, but let me introduce Tawish Olisisana. Good morning, good afternoon. I am talking of morning here. It has passed 18 minutes past morning time where I am now. Good afternoon in Nairobi. Tawish, how has been your weekend?
Well, good afternoon to you, Dr. David Masanga. Good afternoon to Miriam Ogutu from our communication headquarters. And of course, good afternoon also, good evening, good morning to our viewers watching the program in Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the world. Indeed, Dr. Masanga, my weekend has been quite smooth. I've enjoyed, of course, the sunshine, just like you've alluded to. It's somehow moderate and friendly in Nairobi. And I continue to enjoy it even as we prepare to usher in a new week rather. And of course, Dr. Masanga, I'm very glad to have me on Africa Showdown this afternoon on the topic, the Africa we want. I think well prepared, well equipped to tackle the topic and of course discuss matters in the African continent and what we suppose the African continent, the African nations, the leadership of the African continent, and also particularly the people in the African continent, what is it that they can do to better Africa and make it exactly what has been our dream of the African continent. Thank you, Dr. Masanga.
Thank you very much. People are talking of a link. I haven't seen the link coming to us, to me, towards me, to give them the link to see. So make sure that Miriam, as I return this microphone, I am landing back the microphone back to you in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that. So just very quickly, I think the headlines, and then we shall get back to our topic of discussion this afternoon here in Nairobi. The Standard newspaper, Raila battle not over yet. That is the main headline. Sunday Nation, Ruto Raila in renewed blame game. And then we look at some of the dailies across Africa. The Standard from Zimbabwe, Chamisa denied access to Sikhala. And the Daily News, also from Zimbabwe, stiff government charges threaten the poor. And Independent from UK, Hunt rips up Prime Minister's plan. And the Sunday Telegraph from the UK as well, Hunt delays IP tax cut as bank backs Chancellor. The Citizen from Tanzania, meet Zanzibar's beach divers on a tourism trend. And Nipashe also, I think, from Tanzania, Midoli Inasumu, I think that is the main headline. The Guardian from Nigeria, flood sacks 200 communities in rivers and Delta. And The Nation also from Nigeria, Tinubu, my administration will deliver double-digit economic growth. The Sunday Monitor from Uganda, State House COVID test cost taxpayers billions. So that is what we have in some of the newspapers from across the continent, and those few from outside. Now, before I get back to you, just maybe a little bit of in line with the subject we're looking at this afternoon. Agenda 2063 is Africa's blueprint and master plan for transforming Africa into the global powerhouse of the future. It is the continent's strategic framework that aims to deliver on its goal for inclusive and sustainable development and is a concrete manifestation of the Pan-African drive for unity, self-determination, freedom, progress and collective prosperity pursued under Pan-Africanism and Africa Renaissance, and it was dubbed the Africa We Want in 2013 by African Union, while the organization was marking the transformation of OAU to AU in May 2013, and the declaration marked the rededication of Africa towards the attainable of a Pan-African vision of an integrated, prosperous and peaceful Africa, with a couple of issues that were highlighted there, about 20-point agenda that Africa seeks to to achieve as a continent. Under the Africa we want: high standard of living, well-educated citizens, healthy and well-nourished citizens, transformed economies, modern agriculture, a blue ocean economy for accelerated economic growth, and a lot of other wonderful things that were penned down. And 9 years later, not much is happening. So that is where we started. We continue our conversation this afternoon. Doc, back to you.
Thank you very much, Miriam. Thank you very much, my dear sister and Tawish. 2063, 2013, we declared the Africa we want with Madame Dlamini Zuma. I was there in the African Union Hall, seated, making sure that I clap harder. Today, as we look at Africa, the continent, and look at ourselves and each other, look at our countries from every corner of the African continent, whichever country you are, wherever you are, look at yourself. Look at what is going on in this world. Look at how Africa is moving forward. Is it moving forward? Is it stagnant? Is it going back? Is it retarding? What is making it retard? When you hear all leaders in African Union speak of Agenda 2063, silence guns, have we tried to silence even one gun somewhere? Miriam, have we killed the same morals that gave us the impetus to discuss guns? We can, today, countries are even applying. You can see countries applying to be given more time to buy more licenses, permission to buy guns. What are we buying these guns for? Somalia has tabled a motion seeking, instead of tabling a motion to proscribe Al-Shabaab and put them to where they belong, because Al-Shabaab are supposed to be put on the terrorist list. If we look at the assets, who gets the assets? Who is the owner of the assets of Al-Shabaab? Then you will know that that's why they don't want this to be proscribed. Is this the Africa we want? Look at agriculture. Governments in Africa are encouraging the cutting down of trees. I was told by some friend on a flight a few days ago that the trees in South Sudan are finished. There are not, Miriam, there are no trees there. Because charcoal in Saudi Arabia costs 400, a sack of charcoal costs about from $400 to $800. A sack, one sack of charcoal, of well-made, well-organized, well-burnt charcoal, which they can be used for shisha. And then it is more expensive in some other countries like the United Arab Emirates, where they compete with Saudi Arabia, or Qatar, which competes with Saudi Arabia. So the trees in South Sudan are cut. Now we talk of environment, and you are cutting trees, you are burning charcoal, you are looking for money. Is it that most of the countries in Africa, Miriam, all of them, and the Tawish, they look for money? They are looking for hard cash. Nobody is looking for the environment. Nobody is looking how we shall live in 10 years. Nobody is looking at 2063. How will Africa look like? We put it as a blueprint for Africa, but is it working? Is it working? What are the impediments? What has made it difficult for us not to achieve the Agenda 2063? Is it because we have no money? Is it because we have double standards? Is it because if you are speaking as an African intellectual, there is somebody you are reporting to in Europe? This morning I was writing, Miriam, if you have seen what I've written, Obama came here and brought us a voice, very good English, and a gym in Siaya. I don't know who is using that gym now. I don't know who. Obama could have modified in the legacy of his father. would have modified the entire Kogoro. Is it Kegoro? Kongero. Kongero, the whole clan, a president who handled the nuclear weapons that can kill the entire world should have actually made Kegero a town for people to see where the father came from. But he brought us English. Very good English. He even told us some things that I cannot talk about here. I was listening to his lecture in Nairobi University. I even walked away. Let me tell you, Obama brought us good English, very good voice. Amen, hugging with Uhuru Kenyatta. What did the Obama bring here? He was a president. We might not have chance anywhere anymore. You think we shall have a chance anymore? 256 years. 256 years for America to have a black president. How many years more do we need? Shall we be there? What did Obama achieve? In fact, if you look at Miriam, are you there?
Yes.
Miriam?
Yes.
Oh, because my internet is shaky. So if I don't see any movement, I start getting worried.
We can hear you.
If you look at Obama, if you look at Bush, what Bush did is more than what Obama did. Bush actually brought medicine for AIDS. Clinton brought medicine for AIDS, helped countries in sub-Saharan Africa that were ravaged with AIDS pandemic. Uganda benefited from the AIDS vaccines and help and education, outreach working. Those people did great for Africa. But us as African scholars, what went wrong with us? Look at what happened. Libya, nobody talks about Libya. This is Muammar Gaddafi who had said he had turned into the Mediterranean Sea into clean water, one of the world's biggest man-made lake, and the man-made piped water was coming into the entire Libya. Look at what they did to him. So is this the Africa we want? What Africa do we want? A better Africa, where standards of living, where people don't cry of hunger every day in and every year in and out. Kenya, for example, knows very well they need food, but they don't prepare when this drought strikes. You see the government running up and down, collecting governors. You go elsewhere, Uganda, for example, there is Ebola pandemic. The president had to run up and down to lock 2 districts or 3 districts. Why don't we have early warning systems? Nigeria, for example, the rule of law. Look at what is happening in Nigeria. Somebody is told that you are free, your case is over. The government comes up and says, no, we have another body which is different. Then why did you create the courts? Why did you create the court? Why did you create the appeal court and the Supreme Court? Those courts are where we are there and are there to interpret what you cannot interpret. Then why do you bring in National Security Council to interpret what the courts have already decided? Why don't you interpret it and don't take this man to court? Maybe put him on a firing squad. Is this the Africa we want? So most of us are going back to old Benny. We now want to single out the real people like Buhari, the foreign minister, the minister of justice, the attorney general, never to step in the United Kingdom. because they have oppressed the rights of a United Kingdom citizen by almost killing him. So this is going to happen, and we don't talk far. We have already initiated a process. We are going further to first warn the Foreign and Commonwealth Office about individuals that are subjecting people in Nigeria in human treatment. 9 people were killed yesterday. Is this the Africa we want? Insecurity in Nigeria, a big country of 220 million people, which would be buying the commodities that lie idle or surplus commodities in Kenya, Kimbo, Blue Band, all these are lying somewhere here. Nobody, no market. But in Nigeria, there's somebody looking for Blue Band for bread in the morning. Okay? Why is this the Africa we want? Back to you, Miriam, and let's bring in Tawish. Maybe he can tell us what Africa do we want. What is it that we want? A war? The Africa with wars? The Africa with corruption? The Africa with economic decline? The Africa with no education? The Africa with ignorance, disease, and poverty? The poverty lines are beyond the level of any human being living at all. Thank you. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Even as Samuel Tawish comes in, the Agenda 2063 encapsulates not only Africa's aspiration for the future, but also identifies key flagship programs which can boost Africa's economic growth and development and lead to the rapid transformation of the continent. It also identifies key activities to be undertaken in its 10-year implementation plans, which will ensure that Agenda 2063 delivers both quantitative and qualitative transformational outcomes for Africa's people. So this is a 50-year plan, from 2013 to 2063, and now we are 9 years in. I don't know how you think we're doing, Samuel Tawish, as far as a high standard of living and quality of life and well-being for our citizens is concerned. And the priorities areas to address this issue was to create incomes and jobs and decent income for our people in this continent, to address the issue to do with poverty, inequality, and hunger, and social security and protection, including persons with disability, and to have modern, affordable, and livable habitats and quality basic services. So if we were just to go with that, just the first agenda there, and yet we see how many young people from the continent keep dying in the Mediterranean because they're going to seek for greener pastures. There are no decent and income jobs in Africa for a lot of our young people, and poverty and the issues of inequality that have brought about this conflict that we see and we keep talking about in this continent. How would you say we are doing in line with this agenda? And of course, this agenda is anchored on the UN Sustainable Development Goal.
Thank you so much, Miriam, and thank you as well, Dr. Masanga, for the sentiments you've made. Miriam, as we speak today in the 21st century, you wouldn't quite say that the African continent and her people are at a level that they wished to be, or a level that they dreamt to be at this particular time. I'm saying that because, Miriam, when you look into every other aspect of life today, it still remains but a mirage. It still but remains a very big challenge to the people in the African continent. When you talk about the issue of poverty, you talk about diseases, you talk about poor quality of education. I mean, everything that is negative, you will most likely would want to associate it with the African continent. Miriam, talk about the issue of poor leadership in the continent of Africa. You've talked about the issue of the young men and women really dying at the Mediterranean Sea because they're crossing overseas, they're crossing to the European nations, at least to try and get what they imagine is a decent job or a better living compared to the African continent. In this particular century, Miriam, I suppose we would have made the greater strides if it were not for the greed of our leaders and most of the politicians, people whom we have bestowed with the responsibility of ensuring that they create or make policies that are friendly in terms of doing businesses, in terms of creating job opportunities, in terms of empowering our people, and in terms of just making sure that the environment within which we operate is friendly and conducive enough for us to do business, and even those who are able to create job opportunities are able to do that. But Miriam, when you look into the African leaders today, there's not so much they're doing on that front in making sure that they better the lives of the ordinary people. Miriam, look into the kind of conflicts that the most African nations experience today. Of course, the things to do with terrorism and extremism, things to do with, of course, politically instigated violence, and so many of the conflicts that the African continent really faces today, Miriam. I mean, in the 21st century, I would suppose that Africa would have gotten to a level where we become now more of an envy of the other continents in the world, because God has blessed this continent with the rich mineral resources. God has blessed this continent with a very good and favorable weather, for that matter. God has blessed the African continent with almost everything, and also enough, if I must say, enough manpower that is able really to do job in this continent today, Miriam. But we are not tapping that potential. We are not taking advantage of it. We are misusing, and we continue to make our people well in poverty when we have the opportunity to expand and make sure poverty is reduced, if not eliminated completely. So what am I trying to say in essence? I think even as we continue discussing about the African continent that we want an African continent where our people are free of diseases, but even in circumstances that are completely unavoidable, we will want to see initiatives brought forth by governments put in place to make sure that our people are able even to access essential healthcare services, Miriam. We want a continent where our young children are able to get better education, so that they're empowered, so that they get necessary skills for them to be able, say, not only even to get white-collar jobs, so that they are not only ideal candidates for white-collar jobs, but they are also able really to be empowered enough and to have expertise knowledge to put up even companies and create job opportunities for the other people in the continent of Africa. We want an African continent that is free of war, Miriam. When you see Somalia today, when you see Ethiopia and Eritrea today, you go to South Sudan, you go to Central African Republic, I mean to mention but a few, it is only but turmoil. We will want to see a continent that is free of war, a continent that is not fighting with itself, a continent where our people are living together in harmony and in peace, and recognizing that it is our unity is in our diversity, and not necessarily what we continue to experience today as a people of the African continent. Miriam, we also want to see the African continent that is going to completely eradicate the issue of poverty. Why do we have even brain drain today, Miriam? People who are well educated, people of better skills, cannot even get the opportunity to be employed back here in the African continent, simply because we are not providing them with a good opportunity or even a working environment for them to bring about those skills back here at home and for the benefit of our people. When you talk about the most qualified engineers, talk about the best qualified teachers, talk about the best qualified doctors, they cannot really be able to provide those services back here at home, but they can only do it, say, overseas or in Western power countries, simply because they find it there's better and conducive environment out there, there are better remuneration out there compared to the African continent. So there are so many issues that you can talk of what we dream of or aspire as a people of African continent, Miriam. And I do not think that this opportunity and this platform today will be enough really to exhaust it all. But from where I sit as the African man, from where I sit as an African person, those are some of the things I suppose we must really concentrate on, at least so that we also try to level with the rest of the world in terms of what the other continents and other nations in the world are doing, so that by the end of the day, the African people and the African continent will truly be proud and will become an envy of the rest of the world. I submit for now, Miriam.
Yes, indeed. We are taking stock of the Africa we want, Agenda 2063 that was set in 2013, a 50-year plan by African Union. So 9 years later, we just want to see how this is going. And one of these priority areas, there were about 20, but we can't look through all of them. One of them was a united Africa, and the priority areas was frameworks and institutions for a united Africa. And another one was Africa takes full responsibility for financing her development goals. without any development assistance and strengthening the means of revitalize the global partnership as far as development is concerned. So Africa, one of the key agendas here, Doc, I think it's a wonderful dream, is for us to be able to finance our own development goals by 2063 and, of course, have a very much united Africa. I don't know if there are frameworks in place and that even AU is working towards achieving some of these things, because they sound so good on the paper. Is AU even putting any effort on the continent as far as achieving some of these goals is concerned, a united Africa and an Africa that is self-reliant?
Miriam, when you tell me that Africa will be self-reliant, we are already reliant. But we don't know how to be reliant. Mm-hmm. We are reliant, but we don't know how to be reliant. We don't protect our interests. We don't protect our resources. We just give out our resources because we are hungry for money. Look, for example, East Africa is being managed now by United States of America. Somebody is managing this East African region, and we are not talking about it. And we are even very happy to be managed. You know, we are being told, don't do this, don't do that. Look at the voting pattern. No. Bring the voting pattern on the screen. Bring it. Bring the African voting pattern on the screen at the United Nations Security Council. When they were voting on Ukraine, United Nations General Assembly, there are some countries that ran away. They walked, they disappeared. You know, I even allowed President Museveni on this one, on Friday. On Friday, I was very impressed. And I even lauded His Excellency President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. For the first time, he did very well. He said, he told Uganda to just run away. In fact, Mr. President, tell Uganda when such motions come, Medium, run away. That's the Africa we want. Run away. Don't stand to debate. Don't stand to abstain. Are you hearing me? Don't stand to abstain. When they have not finished a war, since 1991, Somalia has been fighting. Our brothers in the West have the capability to help us to finish this war. We are not the ones who started this war in Somalia. America started this war in Somalia. And the media, tuambiane ukweli, haki ya Mungu. We didn't start the war in Somalia. They went to Siadi Bale and they started the war in Somalia. And after that, Somalia fell to chaos. Okay, after Somalia falling into chaos, what has happened now? They abandoned us to sort it out. They ran very fast, removed their helicopters. Some of them were even taken by hostage on the streets of Mogadishu. Did we go there to fight Somali? We have been living with the Somali people. Look at the problem. Why is it that they keep this Somalia all the time? And we in AU, we keep quiet. We also follow. We change it from AMISOM to AMITIS. Tomorrow we shall change it to APTOS. We can go to ASOSI, AMUSOS, AMACHO, ODABOCHO. What?
Those sounds like sauces for barbecue, but it's ATMIS.
Exactly. Exactly. We are now changing it to AMITOS.
AMITOS.
Is it called AMITAS or AMITOS?
ATMIS.
ATMIS.
African Union Transition.
We are changing it ATMIS. It was AMISOM.
AMISOM.
It was what? You know, we are going to change so many names. Yet, look at what America did to Afghanistan. Medium hasn't. Do you hear of Afghanistan anymore? You tell me. Go to the news. Go to CNN. You hear about Afghanistan? You hear about Afghanistan? Where? You don't hear. You only hear that they have cut women's hands. But nobody is reporting now because America is not there. They have gone elsewhere to create another big war. It's not on America. Look at Russia. Russia also equally now. Look, it has become an expansionist theorist. It is being called into where the America left and the French left come. What are we doing as Africa? Is this the Africa we want? Tell me. Tell me one thing, that the war in Somalia, if United States of America brought all their machinery to Mogadishu today and squeezed them from Ethiopian side, Kenyan side, Mogadishu, all the machinery they have, you think Al-Shabaab will be there? Have they not stabilized Iraq? Have they not stabilized Iraq? Why are you not stabilizing Somalia? Because we, the Africans, we are stupid. We are very stupid. We know them. I told you to go and read this book, The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Then you will find out why Somalia is the Africa, the ugly person will continue to be ugly, will never have peace. Look, United Nations, ICJ, International Court of Justice, blabbers about the oil ridges in the Indian Ocean. Miriam, do you hear anybody talking about them now?
No.
No, you tell me.
But Kenya vacated one of those areas. Apparently, it was exploring a little bit.
The Kenya vacated one.
Yeah, they were exploring a little bit. They didn't find anything. 2 weeks ago, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, yeah.
Kenya has vacated one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Is it vacated or it is still there?
I think it's still there, but they were trying to explore. They didn't find anything, so I don't know why we're even fighting about it. I think.
No, okay, look at that.
Yeah.
This oil required today. A ruling was made publicly. And now we are quiet. Everybody is quiet in the region. Because, okay, if you make a ruling and one of the countries goes down to start drilling in the tectonic, tectonic, yes.
Tectonic?
Yes.
Tectonic.
The oil in Saudi Arabia will be not there. Will be zero. That's Saudi Arabia, which is slaughtering our black people and poaching eyes out of them. You see, there will be what we call over-harvesting of oil. So America doesn't want that over-harvesting of oil in the region. Therefore, they want to increase the oil prices by keeping one of the regions volatile. There must be someone to talk like Nyerere, like I've done. I'm sorry. I can be blacklisted if they don't want me, but I'll remain a human being. God will take me. God, God welcomes everybody. Have you ever seen anybody God has refused? No, show me one man God has refused on this earth and say, you stay there until, God takes everybody. But it's better for you to go and say there, another world is there, they talk about it, than keeping quiet and seeing justice. There is a lot of injustice in this whole war of Somalia. It is really very painful. We know the country that supports Al-Shabaab. We know where the uniforms come from. We know where the arms come from. But look at the type of money that we have wasted. And look at the money being paid. They pay money. I am not campaigning against Ugandans getting money from Somalia. But it is wrong. Why don't we look for methods of making sure that insurgents, we radicalize insurgents and terrorism instead of increasing and fighting it by arming more groups and by sending more guns. Let's look for ways. So this is the Africa that we want. I can see Daniel Wesonga, our brother, has joined. Let's give him a chance. What the Africa we want? What do you think where you are seated? Are you in your village now that you have got a minister of sports who is similar, who is like your relative? Actually, he looks like you. A minister of sports in Kenya. How are you in Nairobi, first of all, Daniel Wesonga?
Very fine, Dr. Masanga David, and it's quite a very, very interesting topic about the Africa we want. And, for so many years, Africa has fought to get itself from the shackles or maybe the entrapments of the former colonial masters. And today, even as I have been listening to the conversation, you know, it is very much clear that we are still under the control of the Americans. We are still under the control of the West in the way that we elect our leaders, in the way that we extract and export our resources. We realize that much of the policies that really dictate these processes are actually policies that come from our former colonial masters. You know, more than 60 years since Africa got its independence, we are still actually struggling to be our own people, to have our own governments, to be able to process our own products and be able to sell to the West and be able to compete effectively like China, India, and other former third world countries are doing. But for us, it has been a perpetual, a struggle of balancing power between the African countries themselves and the Western powers. The forefathers of this African continent who fought so hard for this independence and wished that at some point in time, Africa would be fully independent and be able to find an equal space on the negotiation table, be it in commerce, be it in social, political, or economic discussions with the West and the former colonizers, could be, turning to in their graves at the fact that all those decades long after independence, we are still dependent on the Western powers. Recently, we had the COVID pandemic. You saw where the African countries went to seek for help. Rather than thinking of how to make maybe our continent a research hub to our own problems and be able to come up with the solutions to the problems that face the African people, you see most of our leaders actually going to pay homage to France, to Europe, to the other European countries, to America and other superpowers like China. I believe, Dr. Masanga, the Africa we want is a continent that is independent, a continent that does not rely on the Western powers to decide for its next generation of leaders, a continent that is able to extract its resources, be able to add value on it, and be able to competitively export these finished products so that they are able to extract the value, the intrinsic value of the resources that we have in abundance in Africa. The Africa we want is not a chaotic Africa where chaos are exported from abroad into the African soil and we suffer the consequences. Today we have the Russian-Ukraine war happening, but it is Africa that is taking the biggest brunt. It is Africa that is taking, the consequences of this conflict. See how many people in Africa are facing the risk of hunger and starvation simply because of our dependence on these Western powers. Today, as we talk about global health, situation, Africa is still lagging behind in all these sectors. And it is not because Africa is a poor continent. It is because we have left our destinies in the hands of the Western powers who in return instead don't use the resources that we entrust them with to better our lives. Rather, they use that to be able to build their cities, to build their economies at the peril of the common man in the African continent. So therefore, Dr. Masanga, to answer that question of the Africa we want an Africa an African continent where we can have independent decision in our political realm, and that is the major, the major sector that actually really dictates the rest. Once we are able to elect leaders without interference of the West, without the interference of the CIA, the M16, and the other intelligence agencies that work around the clock to ensure that Africa has a very unprecedented regime changes, then we shall have attained our independence. Today, as we are, we do not have the true independence. The independence we got, Dr. Masanga, it only seems that perhaps it was cosmetic, but not in substance. So we need a free Africa. The second point is that we need Africa that has economic independence, where we are able to extract our own resources. We have a lot of minerals in Congo. We have a lot of oil in Somalia. We have a lot of, minerals here in Kenya, copper in Zambia, diamonds in Zimbabwe. We need to have independence of setting up infrastructure or even partnering with some of these Western powers, but making sure that only finished products leave this continent to the markets in Europe. Remember, in a pre-colonial period, these guys actually came to look for markets in Africa, no matter how poor they deemed us to be in terms of, the social capital and all that, but they came to look for markets for their finished products. Why can't we also, now that we've gotten, our own way of doing things, process our products and be able to look for the markets in Europe, in America, and the Middle East and China? That is all we need to do. We do not need them to come here in Africa to mine our minerals and export them to Europe. Thirdly, and finally, Dr. Matsanga, we need a fair level field in terms of global trade, in terms of security, discussions. When we go to the UN General Assembly, let us be given a fair chance. Africa should cease to be to being treated as if we play a second fiddle when it comes to matters of security, when it comes to matters of global terror, and when it comes to matters of global integration. Unless we achieve this kind of equality, we might not be able to compete effectively with other players in the global arena. So therefore, Dr. Masanga, if you can look at it at those using those three facets, then Africa will have no otherwise than to rise and be able to brag of being a powerhouse amongst the global economies, amongst the global political powers, and amongst the global superpowers. I submit, Dr. Masanga.
Thank you very much, my dear brother, Daniel Wesonga. We have Dr. Wanda Wesonga. You are not related at all, because the other one is my son. So thank you very much. Dr. Wanda Wesonga, Daniel has said, these guys, we need to take finished products. Why do we give people jobs? Then they come back and we buy those finished products. How many of us on the African continent use the products that we manufacture here? How many of you wear the shirts that are manufactured in Eldoret, in Kikoi? How many? How many women do we find on a plane going to Turkey to carry Turkey shirts and shirts, latest suits? From Uganda, from Kenya, from Tanzania, even Turkish Airlines. We are even giving, we don't even go by Kenya Airways. Neither do we go by Uganda Airlines or Rwanda Air. Because Rwanda, you can't say Rwanda Air does not arrive in Europe. Rwanda Air goes to Heathrow Airport. If you are landing in Heathrow, on top you see the plane is lying down there. Rwanda Air with a flag there. But we don't use it. We use Emirates. Is this the Africa we want? If we want better things from other places, if you look at the people all the time, people coming all the way from Nigeria joining through Kenya, they are the only ones actually giving Kenya Airways. Right now, if you want a ticket to Nairobi from London, it is a long distance. You will have to book, and if you are not a Platinum Elite Plus member like myself, where they can knock off someone and give you the place, which is don't ask me because there is struggle. I am not the one who created the class struggle. I was created by God himself. There are no seats going to Kenya. On Kenya Airways. Why? It is booked by Nigerians. That's very good. That's the Africa now we want. Because Kenya Airways from London, from Nairobi into London is full. And at times I ask myself, the government, where does this money go? If the plane is full for one full month, Medium, even if I want you to come to London here now, where I am, and I say, fly, you can't get a seat on Kenya Airways. It is full up to capacity. But when you come to the announcement of the profit, net profit, we are always in a negative. Is it that Africa we want? Those are the problems that this television will be talking about from in years to come. We need to talk about these people. We need to, maybe one of the few leaders who picks our clip, our video, will sit down and say, Wesonga said something, which is very important. Wanda said something. Miriam said something. Tawish said something. Dr. Masanga said something. Is it the Africa we want? We don't want our own things, but we go and buy second-hand clothes from Bangkok, Thailand. The ones that have, once the thread does not touch properly, is the one we buy now. Bring it back here, and it is our cotton that we send in big bundles. You see, an African government said, reading the budget, Kenya spent, my country exported 240 million metric tons of cotton. We earned an income. Then the same country, we allowed the same, oh Jesus Christ, this thing is, there is no value addition. There is no value addition. Why do you send cotton? Why do you send cotton? Then you buy second-hand cloth back to Africa. Usually, are you thinking? Even some countries waive the tax on it. Are you thinking? You are creating, you have already denied us employment. You have created employment for those people. Even now, you go and make employment for them. There is no value addition here. Wanda, Dr. Wanda.
Yes, sir. Indeed, Africa need to wake up and get where we want it to be. Because it is indeed very shameful that we are in a position to dress ourselves, but we like Western clothes. Now, the Africa actually that I look forward to have, or the Africa that I want to have, at times I look into the regional economic groups, the SADC, I look into the East African Community, I look into the ECOWAS, the COMESA, all these regional economic groupings that we have. Then I fail to understand why are we not having there is a common work permit that is regional based. Why should a Tanzanian come to Kenya, then be asked for a work permit? Why should I go to Uganda, then I'm asked for a work permit, or I go to Tanzania, then I'm asked for a work permit? So I wish that we use the regional groupings that we have, and the regional economic groupings that we have, we design a way that we have a common work permit, such that if I qualify to work in a certain country, then yes, I'm supposed to work in my region.
The Africa that we want, Wanda, let me bring you in. The Africa we want is the Africa that we need to look at, an Africa that can trade. I am seeing I'm seeing some gentlemen in one of the pubs. They don't.
Yeah.
They can't drink their wine in their homes, but they
Yes.
prefer to go to a pub.
Yeah.
They are at it, and yes, I thought it looked like a pub. Now
Yes.
look at the Africa we want, and this is the gentlemen are very interesting, good people who watch us every day. You can even watch us from where you are right now. Miriam, let me break some interlude. I can see Inspector Mwala at the airport in one of the East African airports. Somewhere I can see another gentleman. Inspector Mwala, good morning or good afternoon. Can you speak? We are hearing you.
Good morning. How are you?
Thank you very much. What you have come in through another video system. Can you speak up and we hear you? We are now hearing you from our TV, please.
Where are you?
Just answer the questions.
Yes,
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Thank you very much. What is Inspector Mara? There is one thing that annoys every African. The Africa we want. What the Africa? Look at that. We are on TV and you are on TV now also. The Africa we want. What is the Africa we want? That's the topic today. What Afrika gani? Unataka Afrika inchi gani? Ikuwe namna gani? Inchi za Afrika zikuwe namna gani?
What I think, the Africa we want, we have like these bamboo sticks.
Yes.
Why do we buy toothpicks from China if we can produce ours just here?
Exactly. That's a point you have made. Inspector Mwale, Professor Wanda, Inspector Mwale and the media in the studio. Mwala challenges us and all of you on the panel. Why do we produce bamboo, then we send sticks to China, then we buy toothpick from China?
Exactly.
That is the Africa that we have.
I think we can buy the machine from China because the machine is cheap. So, yes, and we have to work for here.
Yes, and we create labor. We create labor.
African government buy the machine from China and bring it here so that we make our own toothpicks.
Other than depleting our forests,
Yes.
the forest cover is going. So, ladies and gentlemen, Inspector Mwala has disrupted our program right from one of the airports across Africa, wherever he is. He says the Africa we want is the Africa that should first grow, bring the machines here, bring the machine and create an industry, create labor, create employment, pay taxes within the country. Why do you export cotton, then buy second-hand cloth? So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Inspector Mwale, continue with the good work that you have done for the nation of Republic of Kenya. We salute you. Continue very well with my friend there. I can see him. This other one said that one is not a very good one. This other one is very good. Yes, no. This is beginning to be a very good friend, but he's not yet reached there.
Why do you block him?
Yeah, the other one is very good man.
Or you block Felisa?
So thank you very much. Let's come back. I will tell you that Mwala, it is very bad exercise. Thank you very much. Continue supporting Africa and continue being with that guy there. The gentleman this side is a honorable man, well-organized person. Africa needs, that's the Africa we want. That's the Africa we want. And you know, when you create a battlefield, you better be prepared for the battle. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Miriam. Back to you in the studios. Professor Wanda, you were on the microphone. As Inspector Mala is one of the VIPs in Kenya, and therefore we cannot leave giving him audience. Thank you very much. He has asked a cardinal question. We produce timber, we produce bamboo, we cut it down from Congo forest, send it to China. Why don't we buy a machine, produce toothpicks, and make it here?
Exactly. That you look at Africa and you try ask the Africa that you want, and probably try and get the answers to which kind of Africa do you want. But you still go back into the natural resources that we have as a continent, that we are placed as the richest continent in terms of the resources. We look into the cultural diversity that we have quite a lot in terms of natural resources, in terms of the diversity in us, that if we're able to exploit what we have, that we address Africa that we want, the Africa that will exploit what we have, the Africa that will exploit our market, the Africa that will want to win the outside market in this case, then we'll be having an Africa now that will be a rich and positioned Africa. Allow me to yield the mic as I listen to others for now.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. Tawish, I'm sure you've been listening there before you bring in the next person. If you can hear me, good afternoon.
Oh, yes, good afternoon, Miriam. I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sure you've been listening through. I don't know what have stood out for you from some of the contribution that has been made. I know
we have Dr. from Tanzania, Dar es Salaam. Okay.
All right, Tawish, go ahead.
Very well, thank you so much, Miriam. And I think I've been able to listen through the comments that have been made by various speakers on this platform this afternoon. And it's very, very apparent, Miriam, what the African people will really want of the African continent. When you listen through those submissions, you can clearly see the kind of what appears to be, a disgruntled populace in the African continent. Those who feel like African continent really deserves the best. And owing to the so many opportunities that it has, then it should be doing better than it is today. And Miriam, you've also heard from one Inspector Mwala himself that, for example, how come that the African people today will really plant the bamboo trees and export the bamboo timber to China, only for them to wait for the toothpick to be made in China and be sold back to the African people? We cannot understand. What are these so special machinery that we cannot be able to buy, say, from even China and bring it here in Kenya or Africa, so that we are able to make the toothpicks ourselves here? By doing so, we'll be creating job opportunities, we'll be creating revenue for the government, we'll be able also to make sure that these products are easily affordable for our people compared to what we are getting now, Miriam. So I think it's a very, very big challenge. Take, for example, the issue of oil. And you cannot understand how Africa today, we're having so many challenges when it comes to oil exploration. Oil prices and all those varied challenges regarding to the oil, Miriam. And yet most African countries today are endowed with this mineral resource. They're endowed with this what I want to call quote unquote gold, Miriam. But again, there's not so much we're doing as the African continent to be able to exploit this. We wait until the Western power imperialists really come and do this. And more so, the monies, the revenues, everything they get out of this, really it's not benefiting, or a big chunk of it is not benefiting the African people. And Dr. Masanga has also raised a very important point about, for example, the clothes, the suits we wear here in the African continent. I mean, we have people with talents. We have people with the ability to be able to make this. And we also have even our industries right here in the African continent. But you will find that our people themselves even do not take pride in wearing, for example, the African-made products or attire for that matter. You rarely find people really putting on the African. I want to laud the Western, the West Africa countries. Most of them you'll notice really appreciate and acknowledge and take pride in the African culture. And you'll notice that when you go, for example, say Nigeria today, you go to Ghana, you'll find that most of them, even the dresses they're putting, Miriam, are mostly locally made or from the African. They are made from the African continent here. The same applies even in Uganda. You go to Uganda today, the kitenge, which is one of the popular, of course, dresses that women use in Uganda. You'll find that most of them really embrace. So I think it is the question of attitude and mindset also on the people of African continent again, because we cannot continually but blame governments only or those in leadership. We also must have to alter or at least try to flicker a bit about the attitude and the mindset we have about our continent and what is it we can do individually or collectively from where we are to be able to make this a better continent. I think it is our honors. It is a challenge on all of us, Miriam, to be able to work towards bettering the African continent by making sure, even as we continue preaching about all this, as we continue asking governments or those in leadership to make sure that, say, for example, we have industries that are making things locally here, that we are exploring oil right here, that cocoa that is likely produced in Ghana, we do not need to wait for it to go to France or somewhere else to be for value addition and come back for us at exorbitant prices. These are things that we are able to do. We are capable of doing it. We have enough manpower. And if it's about machinery, we can be able to buy these machineries, of course, from these other countries and bring them to the African people. We'll be able to deal with so many challenges using one thing, Miriam. Take, for example, the issue of value addition. I've just given you a reference of cocoa, which is, grown in Ghana, largely in Ghana in the African continent today. If we are to put up a factory or an industry for value addition for cocoa in Ghana or in the African continent, Miriam, one, we will be creating job opportunities for our young people, men and women who do not have employment, yet they have that capacity. Secondly, Miriam, will also be creating revenue for our governments. We'll be creating revenue for our governments, and we'll also be making sure that we are proud of of consuming that which is locally made from the African continent. So with all those combination of issues, Miriam, you'll appreciate why the African people today still remain restless, still remain more hopeful and pregnant that probably we are going to have a new thinking altogether. We're going to have a paradigm shift as regards to what we need to do, each of us and collectively as the African nations, to be able to better our continent. I submit.
All right. Thank you so much. And of course, we've been joined by Anthony from Tanzania, and we've been looking at the Africa We Want Agenda 2063 that was set by the African Union in 2013. While celebrating 50 years of OAU, and after a transition also to African Union, they're marking 50 years then. So the leaders that were present decided to charter a development agenda for the next 50 years for the continent of Africa, of course anchoring it on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal. And some of the key agendas is to encapsulate not only Africa's aspirations for the future, but also identify key flagship programs which can boost Africa's economic growth and development and lead to the rapid transformation and of the continent. So we looked at a few of these things earlier. The vision seeks to have Africans who are more educated, better living standards for our people, a healthy and well-nourished citizens. And this is a challenge that we're still dealing with. And when you look at the founding fathers, you look at the speech by Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana was the first African country to get its independence. So what he said then, the vision he had, not only for Ghana but for Africa, to address three key things. And one is to have a food secure continent. The next is to have an educated citizens. And the other one was to, I'm forgetting, but very the three key very important things there. And so many years later, this is something that we're still grappling with. So a healthy and well-nourished citizens, how can we achieve this very vital and important goal in the continent if truly we can have the Africa that we want? Anthony.
Dr. Masanga.
Yes,
it's a really a pleasure to be here. It's Sunday, but the topic you are covering is so critical for Africa. We need to ask ourselves every day, and we need to move forward to start doing things for Africa. What is the Africa we want? Let me give some of my ideas. Number one, I think instead of us talking about how much resource we have, it is time for us to talk about how much resource we can share. You find, for example, Kenya has an airline, Tanzania has an airline, Rwanda has an airline. We are competing against each other for passengers to travel to Europe. Why can't we share travel resource? You know, I go back to what used to be the vision of Kenyatta, Nyerere, and Obote, who formed the East African community, and they had East African Airlines. It didn't matter which country you were from, of the three. You could have in your pocket coins with a picture of Kenyatta and notes with a picture of Obote and other notes with a picture of Nyerere. That's where we need to go back to, how we can look at what we have, what we are doing, and instead of us trying to do it in each country on its own, to share the expertise and the abilities. We don't need 5 airlines for 5 East African countries, but this is what we are doing. Number 2, I agree with Dr. Masanga on the point about immigration barriers. You know, I can understand if it is difficult for us to go to Europe, maybe the only ones that's there. It is even more difficult to go to America. The visa fees and the process of application can take you 2-3 days on the computer. But between African countries, why can't a Kenyan or Ugandan just walk to Tanzania? Those borders were put there artificially. The people of Kenya and the people of Tanzania share the Maasai, the Jaluo, the Wakuria, several tribes on the border, which are living on both sides of the border. If we remove immigration borders, we can do other things as well. As an African, I get very distressed seeing that our brothers and sisters are running to Europe when they are in conflict countries instead of coming to friendly African countries. We don't welcome them. We need to rethink. What does the border mean? What is it to be an African? African, as Nyerere and our forefathers used to think, Africa is one. We are a brotherhood. Another thing we can do is to pool our human resources. We have expertise in Africa. If we did a database of all the physicists, chemists, social scientists, and engineers, doctors, we have many. At the moment, for example, people go to, they want to have what they think the best medical services. They go to Europe. They go to India, medical tourism. There's more medical tourism in India than you have in Africa. And yet, we have a cardiac institute in Tanzania, which can perform all kinds of heart surgeries, or in South Africa, or in Kenya. But our African brothers and sisters go to West Germany or United Kingdom, where the health services themselves are bursting at the seams with a number of backlog of patients. So if we pool resources, there is a lot that we can do because our greatest resource is people. People, we have trained people, we have wise people, we have thinkers. We need to think how to use them as Africans, as a continent. Another thing that I think we can do, it used to happen in the 60s and 70s, I don't know what happened in between, is to sponsor cross-border graduate and postgraduate training. Instead of us running to colleges in the United States, in Europe, I don't know, in Asia, we can train our own people. I remember Tanzanians going to study in Nigeria, and Nigerians coming to study at the University of Dar es Salaam in the 70s. I don't see that happening anymore. By now, a lot more should have been happening so that we co-sponsor. You know, Kenyans sponsor 50 or 100 Kenyans to come and study at the University of Dar es Salaam, and we do the reverse. I have relatives who study in the University of Nairobi, and they came and worked back home. Because in those years of East African community, we thought education was a community action. It didn't matter which country you studied from, you are like a graduate of the University of East Africa, Kampala campus, or Dar es Salaam campus, or Nairobi campus. We need to go back there, where we can train our own people, and train them in what we need, not the propaganda that is perhaps inculcated in our education system when we go and study in Europe or in the West. Another thing I'm thinking, one of our panelists talk about us buying from each other. We do a lot of trade. We import foods, we import other products, beauty products, furniture, household items. Many of those are also made in Africa. They are not all made in China or in Germany. And the agricultural products, they are all here. We should buy from each other. Why do we have the AU if it cannot put in place mechanisms for cross-border trade that is easier? We should remove tariffs. You know, we should stop competing with each other for markets in Europe. Instead, collaborate with each other to sell products that are made in our countries. Maybe it would be easier even to pay, because we'll just be paying the differences. Kenya can buy from Tanzania, and Tanzania, they need to buy something, they should first go to neighboring countries, what is available and how much it costs. Another thing that really bothers me, and we have talked about this topic on this forum, is the conflict in Africa. We need to be at peace. We are Africans, but what is the use of being an African at war? Think of how people feel when they are living in countries of conflict. Every time they hear guns or they hear bombs, they hear another coup. How is it affecting them psychologically? How is it affecting them physically? Where is the peace to get prosperity? You cannot get prosperity without peace. We cannot create jobs, employment, products if there is no peace. So places like Ethiopia or Somalia or parts of DR Congo and Nigeria, we need to reach a stage where Africa can live in peace. We are not manufacturers of weapons. We are just being used as a market. I am sure, I can bet some of those things are coming from external factors that are convincing us to be at war with each other so that we can buy more and more weapons. What are we getting killing each other? I come from Tanzania, and we pride ourselves in having Mount Kilimanjaro and the Serengeti and Zanzibar. And we have sometimes fought with our Kenyan brothers that you are promoting some of the destinations in our country as your own. There is no need for us to compete for tourism. We should make one tourist zone so that we are encouraging people, come to East Africa and you can visit Virunga in Rwanda, or come to East Africa and you see the Kenya and the Serengeti. We both benefit. All of us would benefit instead of Kenya spending same amount of money to sell
You
itself
can hear
to
the
Europe.
birds. You can,
Yeah.
in fact, you can hear the good birds behind there in Dar es Salaam.
Yes.
Miriam is laughing in the studio. Good birds. Some of us can't hear that noise of the birds anymore. We are just in very where
Because of conflict.
yeah,
Yes.
where soon, Miriam, where soon oxygen might be very limited here. You know,
Yes.
if this war of Ukraine goes on, some of the places on the planet Earth, there might be no oxygen. Because how do you manufacture oxygen? You need gas. You know, how do you manufacture it? The outside oxygen might be finished. We don't know what Putin is thinking about. He might pollute the air. So you have a point there, Neno. You go ahead. I intervene to thank your birds that were making good noise. That means is a family, is a home in a compound in Dar es Salaam. I know your place very well.
Yes. Yeah, Africa, I just want to finish with this last minor point. Africa has a large resource called land. We have land. The reason why the Chinese are flocking here, the reason why the Arabs are flocking here, the reason why the Europeans, Americans are coming and taking up large chunks of land to make agriculture produce products that they can sell in the country, is because we have land. That land, we can turn Africa into a bread basket of the world. Why we are not doing it? There are many reasons, and maybe this is not there is not enough time to go through it. But think of all the water bodies we have in Africa. Instead of us talking like a few years ago, we were having a tiff with Malawi. They say this lake, Nyasa, is our lake. You guys have no stake in it. We are Africans. That lake belongs to Africa. Whatever border is there, we should forget about the border. We should look for how we can utilize that lake for the benefit of Malawi and Tanzania and Mozambique. Instead of asking who does it belong to. Africa can become the bread basket of the world. We have enough land to produce food for the world, but we are producing maybe enough to consume at home, and we are thinking if we produce more, where are we going to sell it? Because we are competing with each other for external markets. If we were doing it as a joint African initiative, maybe starting with zones, eastern zone, southern zone, western zone, northern zone, we would get somewhere. We'll get the cotton in Egypt, and I don't know, sugarcane from Uganda, and maize from Tanzania, and cassava, like that. So how do we turn Africa into a bread basket for the world and turn ourselves from becoming a food importer and a list of countries that are in famine into a food surplus producing continent? I yield the mic.
Mm-hmm.
You yield the mic. Thank you very much. I thank you very much for all this, and I want to take this opportunity now to give all of you. Thank you very much, Anthony Nero. Nero, you have added something very, very important, very strange, very enterprising, very, 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 you know, what can I say? You have added in something that we had not seen. Kenya Airways competes with Tanzanian Airlines, with Rwanda on the same route. You see, when you look at that, why do we compete on the same route, Miriam? And even make the route very expensive. Whereas KLM, NATO, I wonder, we song and Tawish. KLM, do you see Lufthansa? Where is Lufthansa Airlines? They are in Europe. Where is Alitalia, which is Italy. Those ones wound up and did domestic routes within Italy. But they all wound up and came under one. Even the German airline, Lufthansa, wound up. And they left, you know what they have done? They have left three major airlines. KLM Air France, KLM British Airways. Have you seen? And they sit, not that these countries don't earn money from these airlines. They get their money, their share. They have put all their airplanes in one pool and their shares. And more, can you tell me that KLM can go bankrupt? Where? It cannot go bankrupt. But for us in Africa, Uganda Airlines, the first 1 year, President Museveni worked hard, brought the airline. The first 1 year, no, 6 months, only 6 months, he had to sack the entire management. They had already eaten the money. Is that the Africa we want? And we are competing now. Even somebody went and even put locust on the plane, feeding us with locust. You know, what? That would be even good so that the people can encourage the local tourism. That's okay. But is that the Africa we want? Airlines competing on small route. Ethiopian airline would have joined hands with Kenyan airline, exchange customers. You bring customers. There is no need of Ethiopian airline to come to Nairobi to drop passengers. It should just wait in Addis Ababa to pick the passengers who want to go to other parts which Kenya Airways doesn't go. Have you seen that? Isn't that what Nelo was saying? But Ethiopian airline is forced to come to Nairobi, is now forced to come to Mombasa, where Kenya Airways also fights for the same passengers. And the Precision Air, they are also fighting, and the Rwanda Air, and now Uganda Air, the same passengers. Have you seen that? We have no coordination. Let me give 1 minute each, starting from Wanda, Professor Tawish, Daniel Wesonga, and Anthony, then Tawish. You conclude it for us, then we come to Miriam.
Thank you so much. As Mushi was putting it, that Africa that we want is an Africa that will not compete each other, but an Africa that will be able to exploit her potentials. And as well, I believe that we are the persons that will bring this change. We are the persons that will make Africa be the Africa that we want. That let us get to the ground, let us spread the message that the Africa that we want is not an African where a Tanzanian is competing with a Kenyan, but an Africa where a Tanzanian and a Kenyan are able to do business together. Not a Tanzania, Kenyan who will decide and close their borders and have their fruits and everything destroy or perish on the road, which in this case is leading to the losses and very losses, of which if today a Tanzanian is having an issue, then a Kenyan will definitely feel the same issue. Therefore, the Africa that I want and I pray that we get there is an Africa that will look into our potentials, then exploit our potentials. Is an Africa that will look into what we have, what a neighbor is having, instead of looking into what is China having, instead of going to the nearby country. That today we will have the fish from China get into our market, But if I'm told we really needed this fish, then we just cross the border and get to either Uganda or get to Tanzania, that we import the maize, and the maize is just nearby. Therefore, let us be in a position to use what we have, exploit the market, promote what we have. Let us not import what we are able to deliver as persons. I yield the mic.
Thank you very much. Let's get it from Nario.
Naleo. Naleo Mushi.
Mwishe.
Yes.
Wacha
Mushi.
tupate kutoka kwa Anthony Mushe.
Yeah, I believe, and I have written so, that Africa is one big giant. But this one big giant has been played with by everybody. In the past, it was the Europeans and the Americans. Now the Chinese and the Koreans and everybody else is getting a share of Africa. It is time we stop that. We Africans have to look inwards. There is a lot of potential in what we can do together, and it doesn't take rocket scientists to figure out what needs to happen. It takes political leadership and it takes political commitment. How can we get this political commitment? Because it's up to our leaders to take the lead, but it's up to us in the media, in the education institutions, academia, thinkers and philosophers to say this, to give this message over and over until our leaders start to listen. There is no need for us to be going outside of the continent before we exhaust the resources we have in the continent. Africa can be a great giant. I'm just waiting for that time. It should not be until 2063. I yield them.
Thank you very much. Naleo Mushi says, Anthony Naleo Mushi says, we should not wait for
2063.
Surely. Well, Matsanga, I want to see it now. Not will I be there? Maybe Wesonga, yes. Yes, Wesonga.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Matsanga. And of course, it is always a very insightful show of what Africa should do in order to rise, amongst the continents. And like we always say, that we had the first world, the second world, and all those two exhausted their resources. They exhausted whatever they had in terms of ideas and everything. And Africa now is the new horizon when it comes to the natural resources, when it comes to opportunity. You wouldn't really, Dr. Matsanga, imagine that when you go in the Middle East, when you go to Europe, everyone is actually looking towards coming to Africa to set up their businesses. Today, when you go to countries like Mozambique, the Portuguese are coming back. Young men who are not able to find jobs in Lisbon are coming back to Mozambique. When you go to Namibia, guys from Germany, some cities in Namibia, you could think it is Germany, you're in Berlin. And that is because they understand that of all the three worlds, the first, the second, and the third worlds, only the third world has remained with opportunities. And therefore, we live in a land of boundless opportunities. We only have to put some of these insights that we have for Africa to be able to rise. So, Dr. Matsanga, I believe, even as we come to the conclusion of this discussion, I believe the speakers and all those who have contributed to this afternoon conversation have been able to bring out ingenious and viable ideas on how we can be able to turn around the state of affairs in Africa. Whatever that remains, Dr. Matsanga, for us is our leaders, our people, and the governments of the day to come up with the ways in which these can be put into action. Without that, I believe we will always be talking, writing long speeches, giving very bright ideas, but without implementation, there's nowhere we can head to. So I believe, Dr. Matsanga, it is time the African leaders and its people actually now hit the ground running, and they implemented these ideas of opening up the borders for bilateral business, cooperation between African countries, for enabling free movements of goods and services, for manufacturing, value addition, and all the other great ideas that will be able to revolutionize our economies and put us on the global map when it comes to commerce and trade. So therefore, Dr. Masanga, that is all that remains, putting the action into, a reality. Then we can be able to proudly say that Africa now has embarked on a journey of redeeming itself and growing its economy to elevate its population from poverty and ignorance and disease. Otherwise, Dr. Masanga, apart from that, I don't believe that we can be able to conquer the future that is ahead of us without getting everything on the ground and now start working on a very, very practical, perspective of all these ideas that we've discussed on this particular platform. I submit.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. Miriam, your last word before I conclude? Or should I conclude first?
Should just conclude, Doc, for all of us.
Okay, thank you very much, all of you, for having joined this program on Sunday. It's 48 minutes past 2 o'clock here, East African Standard Time. And, sorry, East African Standard Time is 48 minutes past 3. And it is 48 minutes past 1 where I am. I want to thank you very much. It will be 2 o'clock in the next 12 minutes. For you to have joined this show, we look forward to seeing this on Twitter. I don't see much of Daniel Wesong on Twitter when it comes to Africa. Tomorrow at night, Miriam, we shall continue with this topic. What Africa do we want? Which Africa do we want? I think I will make it a topic tomorrow, but I will modify it with a few things so that we don't go wide. There are so many things that we want. But thank you very much. And I have got a message here for African Union. Again, you can't believe it. It has just issued a lamentation, a chapter calling upon the forces of Ethiopia and Tigray to cease fire. There is an intensified fighting, killings by Eritrean forces. As we speak now, again, these are tears coming down. A statement has just come out a few minutes ago. Why lament? Why are we lamenting? Why can't these people ask for help? Why are they stuck with Obasanjo? Why can't they bring other people? Some of us are willing even to help them strategically, to go behind the enemy lines, to talk to these leaders quietly. These guys need to be persuaded, my dear, to come to Tevo. The suffering of those Tigrayans is too much for me to bear. Thank you very much. God bless you all, Miriam. Thank you in the studios in Nairobi. Thank you, all of you. Continue writing, continue walking, continue have a nice weekend. You remember this is a very important week starting tomorrow. The arrival of so many things on the planet. It is also Madaraka Day, is it? Is it Madaraka Day?
Mashujaa Day.
Mashujaa Day. Mm-hmm. It's Mashujaa Day will be on 20th. So this week we have a very short week. Then, you see, this week we have a very short week, which is going to end up, then start afresh. And there's quite a number of developments that in some African countries, Miriam will be telling us as time goes on. For me, from this side, I thank you very much, Miriam. God bless you. See you tomorrow morning.
All right. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.